Well, history made today at the U.S. Supreme Court, and a decision that will impact lives, of course, all around the country and right here in central Ohio. The ruling states that gay, lesbian, and transgender workers cannot be discriminated against while they're on the job. Thank you for joining us here at 6 p.m. I'm Scott Light.
And I'm Yolanda Harris. One local woman knows the importance of that protection firsthand. 10 TV's Glenn McIntyre has her story and what this means for the fight to outlaw discrimination here in Ohio.
Jimmy Beal has been on the front lines of the fight for equality for nearly 2 decades. In 2015, she and her wife Mindy were the first same-sex couple to get a marriage license in Franklin County.
When they ruled in favor of marriage, we had a lot of people who thought, oh, that's it now. You're all good now. And we were like, no, we can get married and we can still be fired.
In 2003, she was fired from her public school teaching job because it was suspected she was gay. Today, the Supreme Court ruled such a termination violates the law. OSU law professor Mark Spindelman.
The Supreme Court, in a decision written not by a liberal justice, but by a conservative justice, quote, an individual's homosexuality or transgender status is not relevant to employment decisions. It doesn't get more authoritative than that.
He says it's not just the court's ruling that's striking, but also its clear, unmistakable message.
Here the decision is, it's time to recognize that lesbians, gay men, and trans people are first-class citizens entitled to equal dignity and worth and status under law.
This decision tells us that when the Constitution is scrutinized, there is a place for LGBT people in the Constitution. There have been days when we haven't been sure about that. So this definitely tells us that we are also a part of we the people.
Ohio State Senator Nikki Antonio is the sponsor of the Fairness Act. It would outlaw discrimination based on sexuality and gender identity in employment, housing, and public accommodations. She calls today's ruling very significant, but not the final fix.
This is a decision just about employment, whereas what the Fairness Bill, my bill, Senate Bill 11, calls for is protections for LGBTQ folks across the board where they work, live, and play.
For Jimmy and Mindy Beal, this ruling is momentous and emotional.
That people like us don't have to go through what she went through, getting fired from her job, what I went through, living in fear the whole time that I was working as a teacher. What if somebody found out I was gay? Because I knew I would get fired if they did.
And you really think about the people who struggled and fought before you and that they're not here. They're not here to taste that victory. And you think, we are. How grateful I am.
The Ohio Fairness Act has had hearings in both the Senate and the House. After years of failing to get it across the finish line, Antonio hopes today's ruling will provide the momentum it needs for passage. At the Ohio State House, Glenn McIntyre, 10 TV News.
Glenn, thank you. Not everyone is celebrating this ruling, though. The Ohio-based Citizens for Community Values said this: the insurmountable harm done to women and girls today by the U.S. Supreme Court is devastating. It's perhaps only matched by the harm done to voters who elect leaders to make policy, not judges. It goes on to say, quote, today's decision by the court will create more litigation, not less, and put businesses in the untenable position of defending themselves in court against frivolous and baseless lawsuits because of a vague and chaotic court opinion, end quote. We also want to note this: Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost has joined a legal brief that does not support this decision from the High Court.